Is she running late again? As the start time loomed, I mused while gazing at the empty chair. My coworkers also looked frustrated. Eventually, the owner of that seat showed up about an hour after we'd opened for business. My name is Casey. I'm a 48-year-old office worker. I live with my husband Scott and our 2 kids. My kids are in high school and middle school. So they're pretty independent now, allowing me to focus on my job. Scott recently started a business with some friends, and while it seems tough, he's happier than before. I've been working in accounting for quite some time at this small to mid-size company and get along well with the part-time staff. However, I'm having issues with a newer employee named Frances. She's 24. Half my age. The daughter of our managing director, she's clearly a product of nepotism. I didn't mind that initially, it's a small company, and these things happen. So when I heard that the managing director's daughter was joining the company, I just thought, oh, that's it. But Frances is a real piece of work. She was assigned to accounting after one of our part-timers left due to personal reasons. I was mostly handling things on my own, and I'd heard Frances had some qualifications. So, I thought maybe she would lighten my load. Turns out, I was wrong. I'm better off working alone. From our very first meeting, things felt off. When I greeted her, she said, "Sure, nice to meet you." Old hag. I was flabbergasted. Not only was her attention divided, but she also had the audacity to call me old hag upon our first meeting. The managing director just watched it unfold with a smile, not seeming to mind. If my kids behaved like that, I'd tell them. Don't be rude. Are things just different nowadays? I've never really liked our managing director personally. We only converse when necessary. I never knew he was so indulgent with his daughter. He probably thinks she can do no wrong. Confronting Frances would only upset him, so I held my tongue. Though I sighed inwardly, I have a duty to train her, so I went on to explain her the tasks. But Frances wouldn't listen. I can't remember all these things at once, she said, giving up even on listening. I restrained my irritation and asked her about her so-called qualifications. I thought you had some kind of certification. What is it? I thought maybe I could assign her work based on that, but her answer was, I'm an accounting clerk. Apparently, she went to a vocational high school and got the certification almost involuntarily. She tried and failed multiple times to become an accounting technician, she told me. Is it really okay to have someone like that in accounting? I had my reservations, but I did my best to train her while focusing on my own work. A month after Frances joined, her attitude hadn't changed, and she still couldn't do her job properly. To be precise, I had taught her the same things repeatedly, but it seemed like she had no intention of remembering, as she didn't even take notes. Other staff members were also complaining that Frances wouldn't do the work they asked of her. What made it even more frustrating was that she was earning the same salary as me, despite my many years of service. Another month passed, and Frances had shown little to no improvement. One day, she didn't show up at the start time. I called her mobile, but it went unanswered. The managing director was out meeting clients and hadn't arrived at the office yet, so everyone was worried. An hour later, Frances finally showed up, acting as if nothing had happened. What happened? Is everything okay? I asked. Oh, looks like I overslept. What kind of professional does that? I told her. If you're going to be late, you should at least inform the office. Frances gave a nonchalant, "Okay," in response. Everyone around us sighed in unison. From then on, Frances started being late more frequently. Though she supposedly lived with her family, she spent many nights out, something even the managing director was unaware of. There were times when she would be late even when the managing director was in, but all he would say was, "Oh, you're late today," leaving everyone else dumbfounded. The stress from dealing with Frances kept piling up in various ways. And then the incident happened. Is she late again? Even the managing director didn't know. She had spent another night out. Apparently, she stayed at her lover's place. The start time came and went, and she was nowhere to be found. I called her mobile again, but as expected, no answer. At this point, should we just ignore her? My colleague Deanna said, clearly frustrated. Finally, Frances arrived, more than an hour late. She sat down at her desk without a greeting and started putting on makeup as if nothing had happened. Everyone was stunned, but she didn't seem to care. I finally had to say something. "Frances, this really isn't okay." She looked at me, puzzled. "They don't seem to know what's wrong. You come in late, no greeting, and you start doing your makeup?" Just then, I saw the managing director returning to his desk, but I continued. "I've told you before to call if you're going to be late, remember?" It felt ridiculous having to say this to a 24-year-old adult. It was like scolding a child. Frances just sulked, acting, indeed, like a child. The last thing I said was, "Isn't it common courtesy to apologize when you're late?" The managing director stormed over to me, his face twisted in anger. He yelled at me. "You insolent brat, who do you think you are? You're fired." I almost blurted out, "What?" but held my tongue. Nervous glances spread through the room. Of course, the president is conveniently absent. Well, the president's not really reliable, to begin with. Frustrated with the managing director's tirade, my colleague Deanna spoke up. "Wait a minute, Casey hasn't said anything wrong here." Deanna works in sales and hates injustices. She has a strong sense of right and wrong. We've been good friends for a long time, and we help each other out at work. Everyone else in the room nodded at Deanna's words, but not the managing director. He yelled at Deanna. "You're talking back to me? You're fired too." I couldn't take it anymore and glared at the managing director. "Are you serious about this?" Deanna was glaring at him too. He declared both of us fired and told us to leave immediately. At that moment, the president returned, but did nothing but look puzzled. Apparently, the president and the managing director are relatives, and for some reason, the president can't oppose him. Fed up, Deanna and I packed up and left. We stopped by a cafe on the way to catch our breath. "What's his problem?" "I was getting tired of the job, but I didn't think I'd have to quit like this," Deanna said, still fuming. Indeed, we had started to think about quitting the company ever since Frances arrived. "I feel bad that you got fired because of me." That was my biggest concern. Had I not spoken out, Deanna wouldn't have been fired. Deanna reassured me. "It's okay. I was tired of working full-time anyway. Maybe this is a chance to find a part-time job." "What about you, Casey?" "I've actually been offered a part-time accounting position at Scott's company." Deanna thought that sounded like a better option. "Both the managing director and Frances really tick me off." Deanna was still angry, and I agreed with her. "I wonder if the company will be all right without us." "Not that it's any of our business." I said that, and Deanna finally smiled. "Exactly. Even if they beg us to come back, I won't. I feel like suing them for wrongful termination." We decided to take some time to cool off and discuss what to do next. When I got home and told Scott about what happened, he was even angrier than I was. "What? What's up with that managing director?" I was furious too, and unsure about whether I'd made the right decision, but Scott's reaction confirmed that I wasn't in the wrong. Scott's words were comforting, and I finally felt at ease. I then started working in accounting at Scott's company. The part-time accountants who were already there told me they felt more at ease now, as their workload had lightened. Deanna, too, started working for Scott's company. Though not full-time like before, but part-time. Since we were fired on the spot and had to pack up immediately, we hadn't been able to do the paperwork for leaving the company. Someone, probably my successor Francis, would take care of it. We started working energetically in our new environment. After some time had passed, I received a call from the managing director of my previous company. "We don't understand the accounting you were handling. Come to the office immediately." What's he talking about? Could it be they're failing at the monthly payments to clients and sales calculations that I used to handle? Besides, we haven't even received our exit paperwork yet. But we were fired just for being late. Who do they think they're talking to? Needless to say, I declined. No can do. But the managing director was relentless. "Come right now, and we'll rehire you." "You haven't found another job yet, have you?" I sighed. "No thanks. I've already switched jobs. I've taught Frances everything about accounting." Not sure if she gets it, though. I hung up after saying that. Apparently, Deanna also got contacted. There were several clients who said they'd stop doing business if Deanna wasn't handling their accounts. The managing director arrogantly offered her re-employment as well. He had underestimated Deanna, thinking she was just a female salesperson and wasn't capable of handling work. It turned out she was a valuable employee. This fueled our anger towards the managing director once again. Meanwhile, my phone kept ringing, with calls from the previous company reaching over 100 in just a few days. Even when I answered the phone thinking that I had completed the necessary documents for my resignation, I was simply told to come quickly because they would rehire me from above. We'd had enough. Frustrated, Deanna and I decided to go to the previous company and give them a piece of our minds. Upon seeing us, the managing director said, "Ah, you finally came back. You should have returned obediently from the start." We hadn't returned to the company, we were there to confront him. I said with a smile, "You should have no problems if Frances is handling the accounting, right? I taught her everything. If she can't do it, that's on her. You, as both a parent and a boss, are failing if you haven't even noticed her poor behavior." The managing director's face turned red with anger. "How dare you? I even offered to rehire you." I calmly responded, "That's precisely why we don't want to be rehired. In fact, we were considering quitting anyway." He looked utterly shocked. "What?" I went on. "Has Frances started acting like a responsible adult yet? While I don't deny nepotism, at least have her work properly. The way she talks, the attitude when she listens, everything about her is unprofessional. Shouldn't you, as her parent, be the one to address these issues? And you fire us just because we pointed that out? It doesn't make sense. To be honest, I couldn't care less about being fired. It was clear things would go south if Frances was the only one left in accounting." The managing director glared at me. "Plus, firing Deanna, who's a stellar salesperson, shows you really don't know what you're doing. No wonder you're losing clients. How many have you lost in the last month?" I say with a grin, and the managing director's face turns beet red. "I came here today to talk about our wrongful termination. We need you to provide the necessary documents. Also, I wanted to see firsthand how much trouble you're in without us." Deanna chimes in after me. "I've already consulted a lawyer about the wrongful termination. We're willing to consider a settlement if it spares us all the hassle." "What will it be?" The managing director bursts out. What wrongful termination? I was fired on the spot for bringing up issues with an employee's behavior. This is clearly wrongful termination, I say assertively, locking eyes with the visibly pale president. President, this is your company, isn't it? Your relationship with the managing director has nothing to do with us. Getting more than 100 phone calls is crazy, don't you think? You fire us and now you want us back because you're in a jam? Who do you think would even listen to that? The president only manages to look paler, unable to say a word. Mr. President, you've done accounting work before, right? I trust you'll handle the rest. Deanna and I decide there's no point in further discussion and turn to leave. We'll leave the rest to our lawyer. With that, we leave the company. After some time, we received a request for a settlement through a lawyer, and we agreed. We were recognized as victims of wrongful termination, and we got our unpaid wages, severance pay, and a settlement amount higher than the market rate. We were pleased. It felt like we had finally had our revenge on the company. Both Deanna and I would sometimes get urgent calls from clients while we were out, as we had given them our personal numbers. After we abruptly left, some even called to check up on us. I told them the situation and that we had been wrongfully terminated. Word spread quickly in our tight-knit industry. Most of Deanna's clients left once she quit, probably cutting the company's business in half. According to a former colleague, staff kept leaving the company, they were getting complaints from clients, and the president and managing director were overwhelmed trying to keep things running. Frances couldn't manage, so the wife of the former accounting president had to step in. She's a very stern person, and Frances was having a hard time, crying every day. 6 months later, the company apparently went bankrupt. It might be a good thing they lasted half a year. One day, I saw someone who looked like the managing director at a supermarket near the station. I couldn't help but stare. There he was, dressed in the supermarket's uniform, getting yelled at by a young man who seemed to be the store manager. Looks like he's working part-time at the supermarket because he couldn't find another job. I couldn't help but laugh at the irony of the once haughty managing director getting scolded by someone younger. Our eyes met from a distance, and I gave him a nod, which he of course ignored. But I frequent that supermarket, so every time I go, I look for the managing director, who's usually getting yelled at for something. I thought he was competent, but later learned from Deanna that he just took credit for his subordinates' work. By the way, when I told Deanna about the supermarket, she started going there out of curiosity and became a regular customer. In a way, the managing director is contributing to the supermarket's revenue, so maybe he's competent after all. But he's always getting yelled at. Deanna and I continue to work happily at Scott's company. Scott even said he's relieved because our work has increased the company's sales. We're both looking forward to Scott treating us to dinner for our upcoming birthdays. I found a new wife, so let's get a divorce, he said, handing me the divorce papers out of nowhere. What kind of way to say it is that? I replied to Christian, visibly upset. What do you mean? Explain yourself properly. There's nothing much to explain. You're in a wheelchair, right? That means I have to take care of you. I don't want that. So, divorce it is. Shalia, help me! What should I do now? Christian was nearly hysterical, his words hard to make out. His distress was far from normal. Who are you? I responded calmly. Who? It's me, Christian. At first, I didn't recognize him because of his drastic change, but hearing his voice made it clear. Pretending not to know him, Christian seemed quite panicked. My name is Shalia, a 46-year-old homemaker. I have a daughter, Lissa, who's 21. I live with my husband Christian, who's 4 years older, and our daughter. After finishing junior college, I got a job at a construction company. Christian, who was in sales for construction equipment, frequented my company. I was impressed by his diligent salesmanship and took a liking to him. Christian was always very energetic and had a loud voice, and although he sometimes got confused and looked at me with disdain, he left a good impression on me. When he asked me out, I quickly said yes. After several dates, we got married. Our daughter Lissa has already received a job offer. She's set to work at a financial institution starting this spring. Since it's within commuting distance from home, the three of us will continue to live together for a while. With her thesis submitted, Lissa is enjoying her last moments of student life. I felt relieved that I was finally getting a break from parenting. However, our family life hasn't been smooth sailing. Christian has damaged his liver from years of unhealthy living. He can't enjoy his favorite drinks and is on a restricted diet. Although working wasn't a problem for him, his frequent hospital visits led to many absences and lateness at work. His physical strength has significantly declined, forcing him to switch from a sales to an office position. Despite my concerns for Christian, I was overall happy. Your liver function has improved significantly. Let's continue living as usual. Recently, the hospital's test results were good. And Christian showed a smile I hadn't seen in a long time. Thank you. Does that mean I can live a normal life now? The doctor responded with a smile. Yes, that's right. This is thanks to your regular diet. Your wife has done a great job. I was so happy I could barely keep a smile off my face. Despite never receiving a single word of thanks from Christian, I was on the verge of tears, holding back with a handkerchief. The doctor's acknowledgement of my efforts was incredibly gratifying and appreciated. Christian frowned in displeasure. Doctor, what are you saying? It's because I've been taking my medicine and taking care of myself, right? It seemed Christian wasn't pleased with me being praised. He complained like a child who had his credit stolen. Hearing Christian's comment deflated my happy feeling. Of course, medicine is important. But the most crucial thing for your condition is your diet. You are where you are today because of your wife. You can't thank her enough. The doctor advised Christian in an instructive tone. But it seemed Christian wasn't receptive to the doctor's words. He didn't even try to hide his displeasure. So, I quickly wrapped up. Thank you. The conversation. Back at home, Christian called his parents to share the good news. He sounded very happy then. Christian always plays the victim, unable to bear not being the center of attention. Though his illness may play a part, I thought of him as a small-minded man. Everyone at work was so pleased. They said it's because of my good deeds. You two are nothing like that. Christian came home in high spirits. Taking such flattery seriously and looking down on me and Lissa seemed truly low to me. As I was about to retort, Christian blurted out something unbelievable. They're going to throw me a recovery celebration. I can finally drink again. I doubted Christian's words. A recovery celebration? You're not fully healed. How did you explain it to everyone? Christian looked perplexed, as if he didn't understand his own situation. How? The doctor said it's okay to live a normal life, didn't he? The normal the doctor mentioned is your version of normal, not the same as a healthy person's normal. He said to continue living as you have been. Christian suddenly looked annoyed. Let's not sweat the small stuff. I know myself better than anyone. I'll be fine for a day. Indeed, Christian had been abstaining from his beloved alcohol for a long time. Then there were the recent test results. I couldn't say I didn't understand Christian's desire to drink. I was worried but decided to give in. All right. Take care. Just make sure not to eat anything high in salt and limit yourself to just a sip of alcohol for the toast. Christian must have felt victorious, showing a smile I had never seen before. Can I really go? Thank you. Just remember your promise. Yeah, I got it. Christian wasn't really listening to me. It was uncertain how much of what I said would be adhered to. Filled with anxiety, Christian ended up going to the party. That night, Christian came home in high spirits, drunk enough to need a cab ride home from a junior colleague. I thought all the effort until now had gone to waste with such heavy alcohol consumption. Afterward, Christian started attending drinking parties once a week. He didn't consult me at all. He just went on his own. Christian then started making me even more anxious. While eating dinner, Christian began to complain about the restricted diet. This is a bit bland, isn't it? It's so tasteless, I don't feel like I'm eating anything. Until now, he had never complained and even said it was delicious. His taste must have adapted to the strongly flavored food he ate at the drinking parties. At one point, Christian even brought home side dishes from a convenience store that seemed like snacks for drinking. He must have convinced himself he was cured, as others thought he was. I was overwhelmed with anxiety. This surely wasn't going to end well. I tried to warn Christian, but it was like talking to a wall. The last results were good, so it'll be fine. All I could do was sigh and hold my temples. Christian's condition didn't last long. One night, he rushed to the emergency room with severe abdominal pain and fever. The doctor's words were gravely serious. Mr. Christian, you have cirrhosis of the liver, and it's quite advanced. You were continuing with the medication and diet therapy, right? I took the medication. The diet, well. Christian awkwardly looked down. Both the doctor and I were at a loss for words. In my heart, I murmured, "It's your own fault." The doctor must have felt the same. At this point, all we can do is slow the progression and alleviate the symptoms. You also need to be careful of pancreatic cancer. Cancer! That can't be! Doctor, isn't there anything you can do? There must be another treatment option. Christian clung to the doctor, tears streaming down his face, begging for a solution. It's not that there aren't options, but... Please, what is it? What's the option? It's a transplant. A living donor liver transplant. There you go, there's a treatment option. Please, go ahead with the transplant. It's not as simple as that. First, we need to find a donor. Then, here. I have one right here. Christian grabbed my arm. A transplant can't proceed without the donor's voluntary consent. I wanted Christian to be healthy. But honestly, I was scared. I couldn't immediately agree on the spot. On the other hand, Christian's eyes were shining. When do we do the tests? Sooner is better, right? Christian was already set on receiving the transplant surgery. My feelings were of no concern to him. After much thought, I decided to undergo the tests to become a donor. I was a match as a donor. Then, the surgery happened in no time. The operation was over more quickly than I had anticipated. Both Christian and I had successful surgeries. I was hospitalized for 3 weeks, and during my stay, Lisa came to the hospital and took care of me. Afterwards, she continued to visit the hospital to take care of Christian. Christian spent a few days in the ICU before being moved to a general ward, and after 3 months, he was discharged. His prognosis was good, with no complications, rejection, or signs of infection, and he was recovering smoothly. A year later, Christian returned to society and started going to the office again. He looked healthier, more vibrant, and energetic than before. I truly thought it was good that we went through with the transplant. However, my condition then started to worsen. I began to cough, experience shortness of breath and dizziness, and often couldn't stand up. Thinking it was a consequence of the surgery, I had it checked during a regular checkup, but nothing abnormal was found. After visiting various hospitals, I was diagnosed with lung cancer. Despite not smoking, I learned that lung cancer can still occur. Lung cancer doesn't have specific symptoms, which is why it was undiagnosed. Fortunately, my cancer was caught early, so I could be treated with chemotherapy and radiation. The dizziness persisted, and I had difficulty standing, leading to a wheelchair-bound life. It was then, as our roles reversed, that a serious situation occurred. Christian didn't come home one night, and I was worried something had happened, but Lisa handed me her smartphone. On the screen was a photo of Christian happily drinking at a pub with his coworkers. "This was 10 minutes ago," Lisa said with a look of disbelief. I was flabbergasted. Despite having had a liver transplant just a year ago, it seemed Christian had no awareness of being ill. How much trouble he had caused the family due to this lack of awareness. I worried for nothing. Let's just go to sleep. However, Christian didn't come home that day. He didn't return the next morning either, so I called his smartphone. He didn't answer but sent a message instead. The message said he had left divorce papers in the bedroom for me to file. Shocked, I dropped the smartphone to the floor. I called Lisa loudly and asked her to check Christian's bedroom. Lisa came down looking pale. "Mom, this," she said, holding a piece of paper. Taking it, I gasped. "What's this?" I was filled with disbelief. The paper was a filled-out divorce application. "Unbelievable! What kind of person does this?" Lisa, possibly out of frustration, was red-faced and teary-eyed. I, on the other hand, had become calm. I felt more resignation than anger or sadness. Then, my smartphone rang. It was from Christian. Taking a deep breath, I answered. As soon as he heard my voice, Christian began speaking cheerfully. "I've found a new wife, so we're getting a divorce, LOL. Handing me divorce papers out of the blue, what a way to say it. I replied to Christian, clearly upset. "What do you mean? Explain yourself properly." "There's not much to explain. You're in a wheelchair, right? That means I have to take care of you. I don't want that. So, divorce it is." I felt like everything went dark in front of me. It was more of a feeling of disgust and pity than shock. Lisa snatched the smartphone from me and yelled at Christian. "What do you mean her? Are you even human?" I was still in disbelief. However, I didn't feel sad or hurt. Christian's selfish behavior over time had probably numbed my feelings for him. There was a sense of liberation in me. The regrettable part was that Christian never had any feelings of gratitude or respect for our family. Seeing Lisa looking at me worriedly, I smiled at her. "I'll be fine. I've been over him for a while. It's infuriating, though." Still, I was anxious. With my condition, working wouldn't be easy. Of course, I would ensure to get adequate compensation in the divorce settlement. But that alone might not be enough. Given the circumstances, I resolved to focus on what I could do moving forward. "We have to make sure to get enough compensation from the divorce settlement to not struggle with living expenses." I renewed my determination, clenching my fists tightly. He's got a healthy body now, so we should get what we're entitled to, I said to Lissa, who nodded vigorously in agreement. That's right, I'm not alone. I have my lovely and dependable daughter, Lissa, by my side. 3 months after Christian left the house, an unbelievable situation occurred. I had just returned home from a hospital visit and was about to open the front door with Lissa's support when someone jumped out from a hiding spot.
Shalia, help me! What should I do now?
Christian was nearly hysterical, his words hard to make out. His distress was far from normal.
Who are you?
I responded calmly.
Who? It's me, Christian.
At first, I didn't recognize him because of his drastic change, but his voice made it clear. The words I had just spoken were deliberate. I opened the door. Now able to move without a wheelchair as my condition had improved. It would be a nuisance to have someone continue to kneel at the entrance, so I reluctantly let Christian into the house. In the living room, Lissa and I confronted Christian.
What are you doing here?
Christian began to speak, his forehead rubbing against the table.
Please, I was wrong. I want us to get back together. Ha! The nerve you have to say that now.
Lissa said before I could, echoing my thoughts. He had so easily discarded me just because he got healthy. And he had said he didn't want to take care of me. What does he want now?
Just leave, please.
Lissa, unable to bear it any longer, grabbed Christian's arm to make him stand up and leave. When Christian attempted to rise, he suddenly clutched his stomach and collapsed in pain. Despite how I felt about Christian, I couldn't just ignore someone in pain. I asked Lissa to bring the car around, and we took Christian to his regular hospital. In the car, Christian was sweating and groaning, holding his stomach. Upon arrival, I quickly called for a nurse, who then took him to the treatment room. While waiting in the lobby, a nurse called me into the treatment room. Christian's doctor was there and began to explain his condition.
Ma'am, you've just arrived, I see.
The doctor seemed unaware of my relationship with Christian. There was no point in discussing that now, so I listened to the doctor's explanation. What's his condition? The doctor spoke gravely.
As I've explained to him before, there's a strong rejection reaction to the transplanted liver. Immediate hospitalization and treatment are necessary.
Lissa chuckled softly in the background.
He's getting what he deserves.
I coughed to signal disapproval of Lissa's inappropriate comment. But I completely agreed. The doctor pretended not to hear and continued.
We need to switch to a stronger immunosuppressant. This medication puts a significant strain on the kidneys. His kidney values are already poor, so using this suppressant will necessitate dialysis.
I responded immediately.
I see. Please do what you think is best.
The doctor seemed taken aback by my quick response. Starting dialysis means being bedridden in the hospital for about 3 hours, 3 times a week. Once it begins, it's a lifelong commitment, significantly impacting one's lifestyle. Normally, one wouldn't make such a decision so quickly. But I have no involvement in Christian's life anymore. What happens to him is none of my concern. The doctor began to discuss the possibility of transplantation. It dawned on me why Christian had come. He was probably hoping for a kidney transplant from me. Seeking help from me because his condition had worsened was far too convenient. Christian should suffer the complications of liver disease and live the rest of his life on dialysis. When Lissa was out, Christian came to our house again. This time, it seems he properly rang the intercom. He was so emaciated that saying he looked haggard would be an understatement. His face was lifeless and pallid, as if he might collapse at any moment. Although I had an idea why Christian had come, I let him into the house anyway. He must have sneaked out of the hospital. Then Christian began to talk incessantly about the woman he was involved with. She was a 24-year-old coworker. She's 3 months pregnant. Christian revealed shortly after leaving our home that the pregnancy was discovered. I thought I had no feelings left for Christian, but his manner of sharing this news made me feel disgusted by him.
Anyway, I've decided to go ahead and file those divorce papers we put on hold. But since I have my own life to live, you'll need to pay me a lump sum of $50,000 for the settlement,
I stated firmly. It's a bit above the going rate, but considering my illness, it shouldn't be considered too high.
There's no way I can pay that,
Christian retorted, his face turning red with anger. Ignoring Christian's attitude, I continued.
If she's someone from work, she must have known you were married. I'll also be seeking compensation from your mistress in the divorce settlement. Hey, cut the crap. Do you even know who she is?
I had no idea who she was.
She's the boss's daughter. And she thinks I've been divorced for years,
Christian admitted, attempting to justify his deception. I was appalled by his selfishness.
That's your problem. You've done enough. If you don't pay, I'll go to your company and have your wages garnished,
I said sharply.
Please, don't. If the boss finds out about the affair, it'll be a big problem,
I thought to myself.
It's already a big problem, isn't it?
Staring Christian down, he timidly began to speak with a pale face. I'll figure out the money somehow. Just please don't tell the company. If the company finds out, she'll know I'm still married. It'd be cruel to her if she found out about the marriage from an affair. Sympathizing with his mistress? What about me? Christian looked taken aback, then hung his head. I'll arrange the money right away. Just keep quiet about it. I kept my stern gaze on him. Christian knelt on the floor, begging.
Please, keep this quiet.
I couldn't help but laugh at Christian's pitiful state. Christian explained he would borrow the $50,000 settlement from his parents and the mistress's settlement from a loan shark. As long as it didn't inconvenience me, I didn't care where the money came from, but I made sure he understood it needed to be transferred properly. We agreed he would file the divorce papers after transferring the settlement, and I made sure to get it in writing. Christian left dejectedly. He probably came to talk about a kidney transplant. But I didn't let him get to that point. By exploiting Christian's vulnerability, I managed to settle the divorce compensation without further issues. I was glad Lissa wasn't home. Witness such a mess. Being still legally his wife, I went to Christian's hospital to sign all the treatment consent forms, including for dialysis. I decided to check on Christian and found him and a young woman arguing in the common room. The woman seemed very angry. Their loud voices could be heard outside.
Weren't you supposed to be cured? What's with the hospitalization?
This must be Dina, the mistress.
Please, calm down,
Christian replied weakly.
I don't want to deal with an old man in the hospital when I'm about to have a baby.
Such a foul-mouthed woman. I wondered if she really was the boss's daughter. As Lissa eyed her suspiciously. I think I know her, Lissa muttered. Dina continued to rant at Christian.
I absolutely can't handle caregiving.
Christian shrank away, overwhelmed and unable to argue.
And what's this about divorce compensation?
Lissa looked at me and laughed.
I just couldn't help myself and sent a letter about the affair to the company president.
Perhaps that's why Dina came storming in.
It's practically marriage fraud. He lied about being healthy. I'm the one who should be getting the divorce compensation.
I couldn't help but laugh at her words. Lissa's letter might have been too much, but it was a case of reaping what one sows. A young doctor passing by struck up a conversation with Lissa.
Is that your dad in the common room?
There seemed to be a familiarity in his tone. Lissa responded with a smile. Maybe not. I watched their exchange with a touch of amusement. After the doctor left, Lissa looked happily at me, catching my gaze and blushing slightly. Then, a nurse mentioned to me that there was laundry piling up. With a smile, I responded, "Understood," and left, pondering that Christian likely had no one to care for him during his hospital stay. On the way back from the hospital,
I might know that woman, his mistress,
Lissa mentioned.
Probably a senior from high school.
She speculated, recalling a senior who left school halfway through her senior year due to pregnancy.
She must have dropped out because she was pregnant,
Lissa mused, tilting her head in thought. She then suggested,
maybe the child she's carrying isn't Dad's.
Lissa shared rumors that the senior had been involved in dubious activities back then. I had a hunch that the father might be someone else. Just a woman's intuition. But it felt likely. It's that intuition they say women have. After some time, the alimony from the divorce trial was paid by my in-laws. And they didn't just transfer it, they brought it in person.
They said, "We've been so troubled by what our son has done. Truly sorry."
As my in-laws apologized, tears in their eyes, kneeling on the floor.
I will accept the alimony from the divorce trial for my sake, but I intend to have no further dealings with my son, Christian,
was their stance. Christian had angered the CEO and was fired on the spot. Though Christian received severance pay, it was taken by his affair partner under the guise of alimony for the divorce trial, and after that, he went missing. My mother-in-law tearfully shared this with me. Christian has been hospitalized ever since. Due to artificial dialysis and worsening liver conditions, it seems unlikely Christian will be able to leave the hospital in the future. The alimony from the divorce trial was transferred from the company Christian worked for, probably out of shame for their daughter's scandal. It might be a form of hush money, I guess. The divorce turmoil has settled down. After a long while, peaceful days have returned to me. My lung cancer responded well to treatment, and I was recently informed by the doctor that I'm in remission. Now, regular checkups should suffice. Lissa is off to work. Right now, I'm alone at home. Looking around the empty house, this house originally belonged to my relatives. It was renovated and transferred to my name. The renovation costs came from my savings before I got married. This house is my possession. So, even after the divorce, I won't have trouble finding a place to live. As for Lissa, she recently reported that she's dating a young doctor. During her frequent hospital visits, she received advice from the doctor, and they became close. He was a kind, smiling doctor with a friendly demeanor. She plans to bring him home soon. I don't want Lissa to make the same mistakes I did. But with that doctor, she should be fine. I've lost a lot due to my illness. My marriage was a failure, too. But life still has so much more to offer. And then, the CEO of the company Christian worked for offered me a job. It must have been his way of making amends. It was an office job at a local construction company. They valued my previous work experience at another construction company. Since they said I could work from home, I accepted the offer. Having a stable income greatly reduced my anxiety about the future. I am going to be happier from now on. I don't just want to regret the past, I aim to live looking forward.